Shalom and welcome to another edition of our Daily Bread. I'm Messianic Torah. And this week's parashot is the fourth and fifth parashot of the book of Vayikra, also called Leviticus, and it's called Tazria Metzora. And my message for parashot Tazria Metzora 2017 is called The Cost of Life. Now, if you want a summary for Tazria Metzora summary, you can go to loveoftorah.com, and there's a summary there. It's a great way to refresh yourself on this Torah message. Now, what I'm going to be talking about today is we're going to talk about the responsibility, right, of life, and there's some very interesting pieces about that because this Torah portion starts Tazria Metzora. People say, "Oh, what's Tazria mean?" It means conceived, and Metzora means leper. Now, conceived, when you think about a leper and a new baby, they're almost the exact opposite, right? You've got fresh new life and flesh, and then you have somebody whose skin has sores and they've got this disease, and it's a serious issue. And so there's quite a contrast there. And so what it instantly got me thinking of is I started thinking about, okay, what is the difference between these two different states? And we think about how it is, and the safety of the womb. We're going to talk about Yisra'el being the womb and how the Torah affects us that way and what happens while we're developing. And then I'm going to dig in real quick to the story of the four lepers that we get in the half Torah for Tazria Metzora. And that's going to, we're going to dig into the nothing to lose idea and really see about how the world affects us once we're born. And how does it affect our path that we're supposed to be going on? If we're supposed to be going on this path to God, for Messianics or people in the Messianic religion, they're embracing the Torah. They're looking to follow this path, and they're taking the Torah and they're taking Messiah, and they're saying, how are these connected and what is the right understanding? And we're going to dig into that. So this week's parashot, Tazria Metzora 2017, starts in Leviticus 12:1 through 15:33 with the half Torah in 2 Kings 7:3 through 20. So again, my message is called The Cost of Life. Let's dig in. We're going to spend about 15 minutes on this is all. So I want to just hit you with some of these points and hopefully it gets you thinking. Don't forget to like, comment, and share the post if you're enjoying it. So let's get started. So the first thing that we're going to talk about is the cost and responsibility of life. And there's a great way to start this off, and that is with Mashiach. I mean, he is our example, right? And we see in John 10:15 it says, "As the Father knows me, even so I know the Father, and I lay down my life for the sheep." Now, when we take Mashiach, Messiah, Yahushua, when we take him and we look at the pattern of his life, and we see that he gave up his life, right? He sacrificed to give life. And look at all the life that has happened, both in the followers of Messiah that have happened since they were his disciples in the beginning, all the way for the next almost 2,000 years now. What type of life is happening? Because he says he's the life, and it also says the Torah, right, is life. So all of these things are tied up. Moshe says, "I set before you life and death, good and evil. Choose life," right? He was setting before him the Torah, the commandments. And we even see that way back, if we start with Adam and Hava, right, back in the garden, we see that sin is the opposite. Sin represents death. It's a degradation. Now, was it an instant death? No, it was the start of death because they didn't have a timeline. After they sinned, right, he says, "In the day that you eat thereof, you'll surely die." Well, that day for us, they continued to live, but of course it says a day to Yodewahes as 1,000 years to us. So his day, right, they didn't live past 900. They were actually living, it says they kick them out, otherwise they would get the tree of life and live forever. So instead, they're going to die before 1,000 years. which is a biblical day for God from his perspective. So they get kicked out. Now, this is very similar to the leper. And when we see, just like the story of the lepers, they're cast out of Israel, and in particular in the Haftorah, we had the 4 lepers that are cast out. But there's this very interesting thing, because what you have is you have this security, right? You have this security that is within Yisra'el. So to get kicked out of the camp is a big deal, to be cast out. It's the same thing that happened to Adam and Hava in the beginning. And it usually happens because of a defilement. In this case, it's a defilement. Sin is also the model of that defilement, a sin in the flesh. Now, this is an interesting contrast when you compare this to the idea of the womb. And Israel is kind of like the womb. And being part of that community, being part of the Torah-based community, it has its benefits, because it's here where you learn the Torah. It's here where you're developing, you're growing in experience. And this is just like a baby in the womb. They're getting stronger for the Torah. You're seeing good examples. You're doing your Bible study, your Torah study. You're growing in righteous judgment and wisdom. And these are all things that are positive. And they're preparing you and strengthening you so that when you go out into the world, what's on the outside? What's on the outside of the camp of Yisrael? Outside, right, is 2 things. Number 1 is the leper, Metzora, right? The lepers of Yisrael. The ones who are defiled, the ones who aren't quite clean enough, right? They've been defiled. Their flesh has been defiled. They're set outside the camp. And they have to be healed before they can come back inside the camp. And outside of the lepers, which are outside of Israel, is the rest of the world, right? They're worse. They're defiled, right? And so what you see is the further you get away from God and his Torah, the more defiled you become. And there's this statement like backsliding Yisra'el, right? We see it all through the scriptures. Why are they backsliding? Well, that's because they're sinning. They're breaking the commandments. They're getting further away from God. And one of the things that we can see is, even with when we look at the scriptures, there's this desire to come back to what's right. And if we look at this and we say, this idea of shuv, right? This is the Hebrew word for repent. And it's to return, to come back, to bring back. And it's an important word all throughout both the Old and the New Testament, because this idea to be made clean, this is what this Torah portion, Tazria Metzora, it's about being made whole again, and how that wholeness is directly tied to you being able to live in the community of God and to be part of Yisra'el. And so there's just no question about that connection, right? And this is the cost, right? This is like going from the womb inside Israel to the outside world. The outside world's full of sin. It's full of things that can defile you. It's full of wickedness. And when you're out there, as it said with Lot, it said being in Sodom vexed his righteous soul, right? It vexed his soul. He wasn't partaking in the wickedness, but it was vexing his very soul just being around it because of all the wickedness. And this is one of those things that as it says, can you draw near the fire without being burned, right? It's going to have an impact on you. This world is rubbing off on us. And the safe haven that we have, the rock, right, that we have is Yisra'el, is the Torah. That's our rock. And that's the place where we can be safe from being impacted by the wickedness. I mean, when we look at the cups of Pesach, of Passover, right? It says first he's going to bring you out of Mitzrayim, then he's going to rid you of their bondage. Well, if you were already brought out of Mitzrayim, what bondage are you under? But you see, Israel had the problem that they came out of Mitzrayim, but then they had to get Mitzrayim out of them, because they were still complaining and doing things and not following God's commandments and not being in alignment with his will. And so that had to be removed. Those ways and thinking had to be removed, and those desires had to be removed. And so it says that he brought them out and tested them to see if they would obey his commandments or not. Well, that's a pretty big one. And we see this with this when we look at the whole duty, right? It says in Ecclesiastes 12:13, let us hear the conclusion of the whole matter. Fear Elohim and keep his commandments, for this is the whole duty of man. Okay? So this is a big deal, right? The fact is the whole duty of man, is to obey. And what we see is that it isn't to be staying in the womb in that sense, right? The womb is like the Torah. The womb is like the Shabbat. We get this time where we can spend together, where we're protected, right? In the womb, a baby is protected from most of the outside influences of the world. This is a safe place. This is a place for growing, maturing, developing, all of this kind of stuff. And that's what the Shabbat is. It's a massive time to just come back into that womb, the womb of Yisra'el, and to grow and to study and to be strengthened. Because 6 more days out of the week, you're going out into the world, right? And out there in the world is all kinds of things that are going to press upon you, And it's important for people who are Messianic or part of the Messianic religion or anybody to understand that's one of the blessings of the Shabbat that's been given to you. It's one of the blessings of these Torah portions, these parshas, is that you can take that rest. You can develop a little bit more, and then you can go back out for 6 days into the world and try and be healed from the wickedness of there, because we're living in these two worlds, right? There's the flesh and there's the spirit. And, as he said, you have to be born from above. So there's a difference from just, Nicodemus was thinking, how can I climb back in my mother's womb? He's thinking only fleshly and earthly, but he's not looking at spiritually. And there's a spiritual aspect and there's the physical aspects. And guess what? We live in both a physical world and we live in a spiritual world. And so you're not done because you tackled one. You're not done whether it's one or the other, right? Some people walk around, they're all spiritual. Other people are like, we're doing this, so we're done. But like the Pharisees, they're spiritually wicked, even though their outwardly earthly actions show that they might be keeping the commandments. And since he says to them, none of you keeps the commandments, because the commandments are both flesh and spirit. They're physical and spiritual. And so if you're not having both witnesses, right, truth will be established by 2 or more witnesses. If you don't have that second witness, you don't have truth yet. You might be on the right path, but you don't have truth yet. You're not finished. And that's what it talked about when it said, it was funny, it says this is the whole duty, going back to this, it says this is the whole duty of man. But actually in Hebrew it says this is kol Adam. This is all Adam, all man. Right, and it's almost this concept of this whole Adam, the whole completed Adam, right? It not lacking the part is the one that's fearing Yodewah and keeping his commandment. That was the whole Adam, and actually there's a little inclination right there, even to before Hava, right? Before Hava, Eve was born, she was taken from man, right? He took the rib out of man to create woman. So when you think about whole Adam, I think there's a slight hint there talking about the fact that it's returning. It's that shuv. It's returning to your complete state, the beginning of your creation, which is like returning to the womb. There's a lot of really interesting contrasts. So there is a cost and a responsibility of life for Mashiach, for Messiah. Yahushua laid down his life for his sheep. He gave everything, okay? And just as we see with this parashot, Tazria Metzora, we see that the woman, after she bears a man-child or female, there's a cost. There's a time of separation. There's sacrifices. There's offerings before she is clean from bringing this new life, taking this journey in Torah. It costs something. It's not easy. It cost Avraham. It cost him having to offer up his son Yitzhak. It cost Mashiach his life. It costs people things. So if someone's telling you that this doesn't cost anything and this is easy, they're not giving you the accurate picture of this. It definitely, there's a cost to life, but it's worth the cost, right? It's worth the sacrifice. So I hope this was a blessing to you. Again, I hope you're enjoying Parashat Tazria Metzora, my message for 2017. Don't forget to subscribe and leave your comments and your thoughts on this. I love to engage with you and hear what you think on this, and let me know if you thought this video added value to you, and you can share and like it. And until next time, I am going to say shalom.